let's start off a little bit again in case some people missed it, just we've just joined on Instagram. But this is Adam and Amanda from Yachting Canada.
Yeah, I bet it. Put it all on the line. What you seek, you will find. I know you don't see it right now, but you're gonna see light through caramel skies. Won't be scared of the heights. You're only gonna see it when you're there. If life's what you make it, got great expectations. You won't catch me facing the light. Life's what you make it. I got great expectations. Sitting on top of Machu Picchu, up in the clouds, no one can find you. Feels like it wants me to fly. We all got wings, so don't you cry. I'll be thinking about you from Machu Picchu.
They're both in Halifax at the moment. You've been based there for how many years?
We've been 15 years now in Halifax.
I was born and raised here, but we've been living here in Halifax with our kids for 15 years.
Yeah, but we kind of move around the province throughout the year, especially in the summer. We have a summer home in Cape Breton Island, which we're actually moving to soon because we love it so much.
Exactly. Well, I've just moved to Canada. I've moved to Montreal, Canada, a little bit west of you. So that's exciting. And my family are there, good education, beautiful properties, lovely people. And the food in Canada is one of the highlights, I think, that people are really excited about.
That's really interesting.
Yeah,
I know
Montreal's a food place, but tell us about the Halifax area in Nova Scotia.
You'll never find fresher seafood than on the East Coast here. So I know people talk about seafood a lot.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of a given, and it is spectacular, whether in the lobster or shellfish. One of the things people I don't think are that familiar with is our wine region.
Yeah, for sure.
In Nova Scotia. We have a beautiful part of the province called the Annapolis Valley that has its own microclimate and produces tremendous wines. You know a little bit more about that than I do.
I do, yeah. I think that's the great thing about Canada is it's always surprising people. But yeah, our wine here, especially white and sparkling wines, it wins awards all, against anywhere else in the world. So
yeah, but also fresh seafood. You've also got the really nice kind of I think it's kind of cultural, not cultural beers, but different types of beers
here.
There, and you've got that Lunenburg vodka or distillery there where they make
yeah, the beverage industry is kind of a star, especially in Nova Scotia, because I'm more familiar with it. But yeah, there are all sorts of microbreweries popping up everywhere, and they're amazing.
Yeah, I think often people don't think culinary first when I think of Canada. So I'm glad you.
Yeah, I love that. I was just surprised because it's not something that unless you've been here.
Like it's not.
Yeah. Well, I grew up in a restaurant. I got my three brothers as chefs, and they run restaurants in Australia. So my background from hospitality is from the culinary side of things, and I think that's a huge part of yachting and a huge part of kind of when you go to a region. What I've found is the guests do engage with it. If you engage with them and say, "Oh, this area is famous for this," the cod, like cod cheeks or cod tongue. I think cod tongue is delicious. Cod cheeks, cod liver, I can miss it any day. But people, when you start engaging with people, not only from this is a scenically beautiful area, but from a culinary point of view, I think they get a bit more passion about it. And it helps them get off the boat and see something.
I love that you said that because whenever I travel, the first thing I want to do is go to a farmer's market or, I want to understand the local food scene because I went to culinary school too. So I have that background. I'm always
in Canada. The culinary school in Halifax.
The Culinary Institute of Canada. It's actually in Charlottetown, Prince Edward Island.
Stunning.
Yeah.
And even Prince Edward Island's got its whole, I was shocked when I went there. We talked about earlier about some mussels that I was given and that little happy moment that owners are looking for. But yeah, the Prince Edward Island, for the potatoes that they have there, the different mussels, the different oysters, and the 400-pound tuna that I caught up there. So Prince Edward Island,
great
all
fish.
Your different regions. We've got a couple of questions rolling in already. How many kind of regions, not climates, but more cultural regions do you have on the northeast of Canada? that people can visit?
Well, I mean, we speak to the region in the context of the 4 Atlantic provinces. So we have New Brunswick would be the first province you would enter if you were traveling north up through the eastern seaboard. So it's adjacent Maine. So New Brunswick, which has a lot of French and English. It's actually Canada's only officially bilingual province. Then we have Nova Scotia, which is, the word itself is New Scotland, so you can guess we have a lot of Scottish heritage in English and German. Obviously, kind of a melting pot of cultures going all the way back to our Indigenous people who are prevalent throughout the region. And in Newfoundland, we talked about it on an earlier call with you, Liam. Newfoundland has a culture all of its own.
It's all on its own, yeah.
Its language is very fun to try and follow along. And Prince Edward Island, which is a real kind of a beach culture and agricultural
area. Yeah.
So a very diverse people and places. Every place is different.
Yeah.
So there's four regions, and what's your kind of favorite is Brador Lakes, or what are you thinking?
We can't pick a favorite.
Yeah.
I think we can. I will. The Brador Lake is Canada's inland sea in the center of Cape Breton Island, which is spectacular. 900 miles of coastline inside an island that you can take a large yacht into. But also the Northumberland Strait between Nova Scotia and Prince Edward Island, which has warm waters upwards of 80 degrees in the summertime, which for Canada is pretty warm, swimmable waters, and that's kind of beach country.
Beach country for sure.
Amanda loves it too.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. It's amazing. Beaches.
What do we call it?
I call it the Mediterranean of the North.
Yeah.
Okay, the Mediterranean of the North, like that.
Yeah.
What about Brador Lakes? I got a question here. What size yacht can go in Brador Lake?
So the Brador Lakes are extremely deep, and there are 2 entrances to the lake. On the eastern end, there's a canal, which can accommodate a yacht in excess of 200 feet with a 40-foot beam. But then
200 feet with a 44-foot beam,
and
40 foot. After
40 foot, up to 40 feet. Yeah.
Okay.
So the biggest yacht that we worked with that went through the St. Peter's Canal was Archimedes, which was a 223-foot fed ship, and it just went through no issues. But
it's always amazing to see the footage of superyachts going through that canal.
But larger yachts can actually enter the lake in the north end through the Great Brador Channel, which is actually ocean-going large ships transit, cruise ships coming through that way. So it's largely unlimited through that passage.
Yeah, that's where I've been through both. I've never got a chance to go into Brador Lakes. A couple of people are asking there, what are the major ports in the north? I mean, there's questions coming in, and I've got a couple, but if you've got a couple, don't hesitate to ask as well. But we've got a question coming in, what are the major ports up there that people can go to? Like if they're leaving Boston to go and kind of see the East Coast, when would you think they could leave, and what are the major ports was one of the questions.
So the major ports that are more accommodating of yacht needs as far as provisioning and access to airports and basic kind of operational needs. First would be Yarmouth, which is in the most southern point in Nova Scotia, which is the point of entry. Then Lunenburg, which is a working waterfront and a traditional destination with a lot of services accessible. Halifax, the largest city. Moving up into Cape Breton, Sydney, over to Newfoundland, St. John's, Prince Edward Island, Charlottetown, and back to New Brunswick, actually St. John, New Brunswick. So there's a good collection of what we call ports of confidence that would then acting as hubs, support your further exploration of the region.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, fantastic. And I've been to St. John before. Someone asked me what's one of my highlights of the Northeast. I've got many in Canada. I mean, we talked about the tuna, we talked about the mussels, we talked about Halifax, I love. But in St. John, there's a tradition up there. Have you both been to St. John?
Amanda has, yeah.
Newfoundland, yeah.
Yeah, okay. And it's screeching in, correct?
That's right. It's, screeching in and kiss the cod.
Okay, exactly. So someone's asking, what's screeching in mean?
Amanda, you want to speak to being screeched in? You've done it.
I haven't done it.
Oh,
it's on my bucket list.
Yeah, well, so screech is a form of really strong alcohol that you have to take a shot of the screech, and then typically you would then kiss a codfish
Kiss the codfish.
Yeah.
Oh,
and
lovely, eh?
that's,
Now, I
yeah.
remember up there, everyone doing it, kissing the codfish. And I thought, these are strange people up there. But after a couple of rums, I end up getting convinced to be screeched in as St. John.
Yeah, well, there's been a lot of people have cuddled up to a codfish after a few shots of breach. We got a question here, Liam, on how is Yachting Canada working to support and grow the yachting industry in Canada, and what opportunities exist for crew and businesses looking to enter or expand within the market. Oh, it looks like we can tag team on this one, Liam. It's got some of your passion around crew and getting crew into the yachting industry. So we'll speak to what's Yachting Canada doing. Largely, we're a marketing firm that's promoting Canada as a global yachting destination, but in that, we're helping our local communities work to improve or elevate or expand their infrastructure, services, and experiences to support the yacht visitor. So we kind of a twofold thing. We do a lot of waterfront development projects, and in that we're promoting the clients that we're working with as destinations.
And so our company is actually Superyacht East Coast, but we're hosts of Yachting Canada, the podcast with Yachting International Radio. So just to clear that, people are probably thinking Yachting Canada does all the infrastructure.
This is Yachting Canada is the platform to help us promote all of these amazing destinations.
Exactly.
So,
yeah.
Well, when I think Yachting Canada, I don't think some organisation. I think Adam and Amanda. That's the solution to going to Canada with a yacht. You go to Yachting Canada. But yeah, Superyacht East Coast, correct?
Superyacht East Coast, yeah. We run around the world telling marine visitors to come visit us because it's yachting's best kept secret for sure.
But this second half of this question, Liam, was we talked about this earlier. They're asking this is Alex is asking, what opportunities exist for crew and businesses looking to enter or expand within the market? Like crew, we have a passion about getting crew into the yachting industry, especially Canadian crew.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't know why. Like I've spoken a lot of times about it. We have great, the yachting industry is a big space, and there's a lot of places all over the world for it. But I just don't see a lot of Canadians coming into the market, and I can't understand why. I think I'm not sure. I think we have a lot of South Africans, a lot of different cultures from all over the world coming into the super yacht industry in Fort Lauderdale. But I want to say it's like less than 5% is Canadian, and they're just there. So for me, is there some courses there that people like Yachtmaster Offshore, STCW, can people do courses in Canada that can help in the yachting?
Yeah, there definitely are. There are marine colleges across, especially across the Maritimes. I just think it's an education and understanding that the yachting industry is a path to a career.
Yeah.
Here it would largely be more focused on fishing and commercial careers. So just as more boats visit and there's more awareness of yachting as a marine trade, so to speak, or accessing or creating that access, more people I think will become.
I think it's somewhat of an emerging industry here. So, when things are in your face, they become more obvious to you. So, if you're growing up in Florida, you're surrounded by yachts.
Exactly.
So it seems, it's just top of mind. Whereas here, we do get yachts, but it's not as in our face maybe. So they're not thinking about it as a career as much.
And one of the parts of this question is also how do businesses get into this opportunity? And it's funny because some businesses would think they'd see a yacht and not understand how they might be connected to it. I used the story of an HVAC service company that I engaged several years ago to do work on a yacht. They had never in their dreams imagined that their service would be applicable to a boat. So the education is a big part of what we do too, to get people recognizing that their service they might offer can be taken and elevated and delivered to this new market.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And is there any notable schools up in Canada you'd recommend, or in your area in Halifax, maritime schools that people could go to?
Yep, we have a Nova Scotia Community College in Port Hawkesbury and Cape Breton, Strait Area campus that offers multiple courses for those looking to enter into the marine industry. There's also a college in PEI, the name escapes me right now. We have another program in Halifax, a company called Survival Systems that does like offshore training and helicopter training for all those types of firefighting that you need to those prerequisite courses to get in your yacht master. So there's a number of different places that offer the kind of open the door to getting into the marine industry.
It reminds me of the captain of Blue Nose. He was saying you don't always have to have the education. Sometimes the most, I'm totally misquoting him, his quote here, but more useful would be, what did he say? Furnisher, refinisher, and
yeah, I forget. Yeah,
hospitality or serving. Like all of these things really, are useful in this industry. So you don't, unless you want to go into sort of the captain route or the navigational route.
So, well, I had a question here from a charter broker. Actually, what type of yachts? What type of yacht is suitable for Canadian waters? I mean, are people thinking, for some reason, I've got a question, icebreakers, is it that cold? What type of yachts do you see come through Halifax going up? You mentioned Archimedes, you mentioned...
Yeah, we see everything from a small, 30-foot sailboat. A lot of Norwegian sailors come through in the spring on their way south, right up to large super yachts and everything in between. Me personally, on the East Coast here in Nova Scotia, like 150-foot or less yacht is perfect, because you're going to get into a lot of the rivers. You're going to easily get into Canada's inland sea, the Brewer Lake. You're going to get in a lot of secluded anchorages, and that's not to say bigger boats, you can do all that too, but the ease of navigating a boat of that size is just perfect. And that's kind of a size we see a lot of, that range, the 130 to 150. But Halifax is unlimited. Halifax Harbor can take the big shots in the world. Years ago, I worked on the Halifax waterfront, and I was getting calls from some of the largest yachts being constructed because they needed to know if there were any places they could go.
Yeah.
And Halifax is one.
Yeah, here's another one. What unique advantages does Canada offer as a yachting destination, and who are the types of ultra high net worth individuals who would appreciate it most?
These are great questions.
Yeah.
I mean, that's so hard to narrow down to just, one person that would be interested. But I really feel like the expedition yachts, or anybody that really loves outdoors, culture, music, scenery, fishing.
I think if you want to, those folks that really want to immerse themselves in a community as well, we see a lot of visitors that, sometimes yachting has a perception that it's people that aren't not necessarily wanting to interact. And we see the folks that really want to participate in the destination and kind of become one of the locals, so to speak. And that's really rewarding when we help facilitate that, because it creates that lasting maritime connection that I think a lot of us that work in this industry really thrive on.
Well, I think that's what created the industry. It's why we go to sea for. I mean, I know we've gone over time. I try and allocate 15 minutes for these questions and answers. If you've got time, let's keep going. If that's
yeah.
I'm passionate about it, and I see the Northeast, New England, and Boston. And I've been to these areas a dozen times, over my cruising career of 25 years. But I see these places like Canada is just there, not even an overnight run, 3 or 4 hours away from Boston.
Yeah.
And you're in a unique world that's easy to enter. It's English speaking. It's got great waterways, good facilities, good people, great skill set and infrastructure. I mean, even in the dollar now, from $1 to $1.30, $1 is about $1.40 now, correct? Canadian?
Yeah, definitely a perk.
So why do we have so many questions now about going to Canada? Why Canada? Where's Canada? Is it cold? What type of ship? Do you think it's just people are unaware of it, or?
I don't know. I feel like the people who have been here or are aware of it, they know, what everyone else is missing out on.
Yeah, true.
But I think we just tend to be quietly confident about this amazing place. Maybe we're not as loud as we should be.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think there's an education gap, right?
And misconceptions.
And sometimes it's felt that the experience stops at the main border, but it's really where the experience begins, right?
Yeah.
There you go. Oh, you'll be the next tourism minister of, Cape Town.
We did a great itinerary. It's on our website.
Okay.
It was a lighthouse itinerary that takes you from Portland, Maine, all the way to the end of Cape Breton. So it's kind of using lighthouses to lead your way.
Oh,
So I mean, there's all sorts of unique things about the two places, but there's definitely the Northeast US and then the Canadian East Coast. There's so many similarities in landscape. It's just not as crowded once you get up here.
Here's a really good question. Are there marinas on both the west and east coast for the new breed of super yachts?
As in the bigger ones.
Yeah. So I mean, I just spoke to the largest port on Canada's east coast is the port of Halifax. It's the capital of Nova Scotia. It's a large commercial shipping port, home of Canada's East Coast Navy. It's got a large cruise terminal, but more spectacularly, it has one of the longest continuous boardwalks in the world on the Halifax waterfront, which is really a marina, but it's not a super yacht marina in the tradition of what you would find in Florida. Definitely not Monaco, but it's floating. We're working with communities to install appropriate floating docks, power, water, access to shoreside services, fuel, etc. The West Coast, our friends at Victoria International Marina in Victoria on Vancouver Island, they have more of a super yacht, purpose-built marina, which is spectacular. That would be one of the super yacht marinas, more prominent ones in Canada. If you're going up to the Great Lakes, the Toronto waterfront is accessible, otherwise throughout Canada, you're finding more traditional infrastructure that is in a state of steady improvement as the industry grows.
we've also got these big ports. These ports, what people always forget too, is these ports are built around shipping. They didn't come from the land; they came from the sea. So there's always dockage. Like people are going to worry about the super yacht feel and the power and the shore power. I love tying up to a commercial place where you've got, the people there are happy to help you. There's all the facilities available. Take the tender into a small marina to drop the guests off. But there's generally dockage in most parts of the world if you're available just to use a commercial dock.
Well, especially in this part of the world where we are, the Atlantic provinces, they're all, essentially islands. So they're surrounded by water. There's lots of places to get into the land and access land by water.
And you've also got international airports in all these ports we talked about. The ports
and fantastic food scene and all sorts of things to do. And if you don't have to just be outdoorsy, it's just the most obvious thing is that it's just gorgeous and so much beautiful scenery to explore. But I mean, you can be in a port that's an exciting little city and be immersed in, that liveliness, and then you can escape and disappear and go to a remote anchorage. There's kind of everything here.
I like this. Next question here we have is, how careful is Canada in regards to the waterways compared to other countries? We definitely are very protective of our environment, and that with respect to regardless of the size of vessel or commercial or private. We like to see our marinas operating sustainable operations and our guests behaving with nature and the environment in mind. So there's obviously regulations in Canada that are very strict around operations of a vessel, and we work with our visitors to make sure they're in compliance with those.
And you were actually the one to get the blue.
The Halifax waterfront was the first blue flag marina in Canada, actually, which designation that I helped secure in 2012, and it's been compliant ever since. And that's a global recognition.
And one of our favorite places, Adam mentioned earlier, the Bredor Lakes. They're a World UNESCO biosphere.
Yeah. So we have a few biospheres, and I love that question because if we don't protect the asset that is our environment here, then we've lost the reason for you to come.
Exactly.
Right?
Well, that's why it's, the same as with the cod back in the day. There wasn't the cod embargo, you know what I mean? That they stopped the cod, and all of a sudden you're starting to get more cod back to Canada, which is special. And people are getting private licenses and you can go fishing. So I fished for cod when I was up there. But what movements are you seeing in the laws in regards to charter yachts? Because that's the big one for me. Like we've talked about this, and as a charter captain, we've discussed it, we've been over it, there is requirements, but it is possible and it's not unrealistic. The price is unrealistic and the timeline is not unrealistic either. Depends on the size of the vessel. But just talk us through getting a charter permit.
Well, I think, and we've worked on this with you, you need to be working with a professional on this end that knows the process. So, we recommend engaging a maritime lawyer who works through these, so that it'll save you time and effort on navigating the different complexities, because there are several levels of bureaucracy that are involved in obtaining a coastal trading license, which is your permission to charter. But as you know, Liam, having looked into it yourself, there's a perception that it's against the law to charter in Canada. Well, it is if you don't follow the law.
Yeah.
Right.
That's like anywhere, like in
You've been successful in doing it. It's
I've worked with boats and had them successfully navigate the process. You just need to allow yourself a bit of runway so that everything can be put into order. And if you wanted to charter in 2025 in Canada, you should probably start the process in fall of 2024.
Yeah.
Right? So
allow
give yourself time.
And once you've got the charter license, then the question I got here is, is there a tax associated with it in terms of above the charter rate? Like I know Bahamas have a 10% tax, Costa Rica a 2% tax.
Yeah, there's a tax formula, and it's based on a survey of the vessel and all sorts of particulars. So it would be, there's not a flat rate that you can apply. It's based on the vessel size and tonnage and all sorts of
magic.
Yeah. So it's again why the timeline. So with Yachting Canada, this platform is we're getting more awareness out there of Canada is accessible for charter. There's a process, but the more people that go through it, even on our end, the more familiar those regulators become with the opportunity, and it becomes more seamless or frictionless, I guess is the word that we use in the yachting industry.
That's
right. But when you only have if you don't have a lot of boats doing it, then it seems like you're restarting every time you try to proceed with it. So we need more interest in that.
Yeah, well, if Unbridled's going to the West Coast, if we were going back up to the Northeast this year, we were going for a charter license on the East Coast. But it's still applicable on both coasts, correct? It's still a Canadian.
It's a federally regulated license, so it's weird with countries as big as Canada, and sometimes even as small as our part of the world. Sometimes you have regulated bodies that have different interpretations of their own regulations. So it's again, getting on into this early is our advice, and engaging with someone that can help you through it. Like we can help in the early stages of it, but again, our recommendation is to engage a maritime professional that does this sort of work.
Perfect. Well, you've been really amazing. It's insightful. I try and keep it a little bit shorter than most type of interviews or podcasts, because I want people kind of wanting more. So we've talked about the weather. We talked about the culinary side of things. We talked about the locations, destinations, charter licenses, fueling. We haven't talked about. Is that pretty easy up there?
Yeah, most fueling would be done by truck.
Okay.
That's because, again, we don't really have the large superyacht facilities, so many wharves that you would come into, you would just on your way in or after you've arrived, you would book an appointment by delivery by truck, and no problem. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Is there duty-free fuel at all, or no?
It's something that I'm not that familiar with that part of it.
Okay. Yeah, I think when I left, for some reason it was burnt in Canada. It was a reduced rate, but don't quote me on that. I remember when we did the Northwest Passage, that was a big thing. Is it going to be used in Canada or not used? Well,
there's a process to go through to get your tax back, and there's it gets pretty complex. And again, we defer to other folks on our team that would be more versed in that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But in summary, it's got the tools. Canada's got the tools. Yachting Canada, and Superyacht East Coast are the people to work with. Have you got any final things to say about Canada itself, and any other reasons people should get up there and see it?
Well, I think if you are looking to really use your yacht and use all that equipment and all that technology and get back to kind of the real spirit of exploration, then Canada, East Coast, West Coast, Northwest Passage is your playground.
And you were saying, I mean, finding new destinations is getting more and more difficult. Yeah. And we have that advantage where there's we're kind of always under the radar. So there's a little bit of an unknown there that makes it a bit magical. And when people visit, you can literally feel like you're discovering a place.
Well, I think it's because the geography, and again, we're on the East Coast and we're more intimately familiar. But we've both traveled to the West Coast, and it's spectacular. It's like and I say this a lot, almost every mile you put under the keel or behind the boat, the landscape changes as you're passing by so dramatically. And then the people also change.
Yeah.
So it's not like you've just kind of repeating the same experience over and over again as you're traveling through this part of the world. Yeah. It's completely different. People, landscape, environment,
culture, I think. And then you've got the Native Americans up there as well, which is quite different regions have very different style of, people themselves and their languages and their cultures. And that's
but we all tie back on the coast, especially, we all tie back to the water. Yeah. And so when our visitors come by water, it's almost like we have this common relationship already established where you can just grow from there. And you come as a visitor and you leave as family. That's really how people feel. I think that's I think
people feel at home.
Somebody we spoke to, I forget who it was recently, but said we said, how do you describe coming to Nova Scotia was at the time, and they're not from here, they've been here, and they said it feels like I'm coming home.
Yeah,
it's like that's a pretty good endorsement.
Yeah, absolutely. Right? I like the remoteness that you give it too, because it is true. I did Maine last year, and Maine was beautiful, don't get me wrong. And but I've done it a lot, and I've seen it, and I know the places, and a lot of lobster pots. And then I remember all my times that I've cruised through Canada thinking it was a lot simpler. It was a lot more beautiful and a lot simpler. For some reason, I'm not sure because I'm Australian, Canadians have that.
I think in Maine, every citizen is allowed to put out a lobster pot.
I think
and they stay in year round, which is great if you love lobster, but it definitely
you do love lobster.
It definitely is a complication when it comes to transiting through there. That's something. But the great thing in Nova Scotia is most of our lobster fishing is done in the winter. Not pretty tough on the fishermen, but it's and our only spring and summer lobster season ends May 30th or June 30th. June 30th, I believe.
June 30th.
Yeah. So the full-on summer season is lobster pot.
I think all the Canadians really look forward to their summer. It's working in the winter and get to your summer holidays and go for a trip,
Yeah,
we definitely go for the summer.
Well, and if you've been here for the summer, you can understand why.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, I did Quebec last year in Montreal, and that was, I'll never forget. I was in Quebec. We went from Montreal to Quebec. Saw it was completely French exposure, like the language, the food. We went to a vineyard. We went to a waterfall. It was just in one day we saw these unbelievable things in one day around Quebec City. And I've done the same thing in Lunenburg and St. John and all these areas in Canada. So I'm a believer. I'll go Maple Leaves and
well, it's champions like you are what we need to help encourage folks to come visit. So we really appreciate all your enthusiasm for all things Canada.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, folks. We'll follow, Yachting Canada. Really thanks to Yacht International Radio. We couldn't do it without them. It's an unbelievable platform for exposure and positivity in the yachting industry. And I think more people should be aware of Yachting International Radio. And also thank you to the owner, Mr. Jim Glidewell of Yacht Unbridled. It's a beautiful platform for chartering. If you've got any questions about chartering Unbridled, any questions about Canada, any questions in general, reach out to Captain Liam Unbridled, Yacht Unbridled, Yacht International Radio, Yachting Canada. It's all below. And I don't know how to do the subscribe thing yet, but if anyone can figure that out, figure it out.
You're doing great.
You're doing great.
Adam.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Be safe.
See you later.
Ciao.
Our upcoming itinerary is super exciting. We've just finished a few trips in the Caribbean. Then we're moving over to Costa Rica for a really adventurous trip there, up in the mountains, a lot of diving. And then we sail around to Alaska, where it's a little bit colder, but we are very excited to explore a new part of the world. Not many boats go there, so it is a fantastic opportunity to get on board and explore with us.